So that brings me to the, I guess the thesis of your talk that you gave last spring. The talk was called "Freed Money:
Yeah.
The History of Philanthropy in the United States." Why did you call it "Freed Money"?
Well, because you begin to have people like Carnegie, who have so much money that, excuse me, they can do whatever they want. They can build castles in Scotland, which he did. You can have houses all over the place. You can own whole country clubs. You can do whatever you want. And then he looked around and he said, oh my God, I have these buckets of money that I can't think of anything really to do with. And so he began, in effect, to look around. And he never made the professionalization step that you suggest in... no, he never went out and got somebody to do it for him.
I live in D.C., a couple blocks from the Carnegie Institution.
Yeah.
And they got a timeline up there.
Right.
And
he created that.
he had some professionals working on some stuff.
Well, but what he did was the first step was him doing that. I mean, he decided to build Carnegie Hall.
It says there's a really fascinating history of Carnegie in that building in D.C. If I recall, it was like medical research funding.
Yeah.
Was the very first thing.
But he gave away all of his money.
He died without any money.
For example, he gave church organs away when he went to a church. He go into the church, you don't have an organ? Fine, I'll buy you an organ. They said, well, we really need a music venue in New York City. Sure, I'll build Carnegie Hall. There was very little, and of course he created the Carnegie Institute. He created a variety of ongoing agencies that gave money away, but he did most of it himself. Rockefeller and Sage and Ford, during the same period, if you extend it out into the 20s, turned to administrative agencies that they controlled to give the money away.
So you're to the topic of freed money, right? This is more money than they can possibly spend on themselves.
Right.
And it's excess capital that they possess. There have been absurdly wealthy people long before America. Mansa Musa had the equivalent of over $1 trillion. He once when he went on a pilgrimage to Mecca, he was collapsing economies in every single, as his pilgrimage went through them. He was literally, because it was way too much money, and it would just cause inflation where we went. That's how everybody was poor, and he had everything. And there was once upon a time a general, I forget his name, Roman general, right? He basically started the first fire brigade, and it was literally that he would set your house on fire, and he'd be like, "Well, put it out if you give me your house."
No.
Right? And he became the richest person in the Roman Empire by a lot. How was there? They certainly had a tremendous. Sometimes in some of these cases, Mansa Musa and this general, the equality was actually more extreme than you even see today. And we get a lot of talk about how income inequality has spiked. How is that? Do they not have any free money? Was it all tied up? They were keeping it for themselves. How is that different?
Well,
what's the exception? I guess is the question.
I really don't know. The question is, first of all, how many of those were there? And the fact of the matter is that in Europe, in the Anglo-American world, between 1880 and 1930, the number of people who became so wealthy that they had freed money was enormous. They were called collectively the New Rich.
Yes.
And they did things.
I've met some of them.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, it was alarmingly like today, and that was they lived a life. There were these exposés of the parties they threw with
the stereotype is that they spend selfishly on themselves.
Well, or in a way that's beyond the imagination of, say, an average middle class person. Yeah. And what happened was a very negative movement developed among farmers and workers, and it was a populist movement in the 90s. And the idea here was to do something about this. Then that kind of gets away from philanthropy. That gets away from political, I guess, reform of the system. And of course, one of the things was to come up with the income tax. And that was to take some of that freed money some of that largesse that all these rich people had, give it to the government and have the government do things for the collective good.
Yes, and there was the creation of the foundation system.
Right.
And a lot of the foundations are, it's complicated accountant's prattle, really. But one of the things a lot of folks don't understand, and that I have to do in my job often when I'm explaining to the fund seekers or supplicants, as the widow sage would call them, is explaining that when money is being held by a foundation, even a private family foundation, it is technically held by the government. It's public money, and the board of that foundation is allowed to steward it. What you just said is correct. That is, they are sort of giving their money over to the government, and retaining some level of control, right, to be able to use their freed money. And I think the best example of freed money is money that a wealthy family siphons off from their main corpus,
right,
to give into a fund that is purely for giving.
Right.